what do we do when we walk in our building every day? Temperature. So you'll get your temperature, get your blood pressure. What about their hydration? You know, just like you're taking care of kids, step it through. They have a feeding tube. If they have an ulcer, respiratory status. We're thinking, do they have a trach? They don't. Describe the breath sounds. If you're unsure of breath sounds, there's lots of places. If you think you guys want some education on that, we can do some group education. We can do some education on different things. What's the respiratory rate, rhythm, and quality? This all goes back to just basic nursing skills, you guys, and saying, why am I looking at this patient? Why is this patient here? What do I need to document about this patient? And if something isn't where it needs to be, if it's not at your expectation level, why isn't it? And what are you going to do about it? So the other half of that, and we're not going to talk about that today, is then once you do your assessment, do I need to update anybody? Do I need to tell anybody about what's going on here? If I'm an LPN, I'm going to ask myself that question every time I enter all this data to make sure that I'm reporting off to my RN. And if I was the LPN, once I reported off to that RN, or if that was my plan and I did that, I would report it to RN. So that you did what you were supposed to do and you reported that to the RN. Take credit for that. If you're the RN, take credit for giving that information and what you might have done to respond to that. If you delegated something, delegate it appropriately. Don't delegate something that you don't think they can do, but make sure you are doing that. And I apologize that we can't see the whole thing. I just want to give a surgical wounds is a good one as far as where's the location, what does it look like, is there any pain, what kind of interventions are you doing, is there any drainage, are they responding the way that we expect them to respond? It doesn't have to be pages and pages of documentation. Focus it on why that person is here. This is a great one right here. I have several examples of different topics and several bullet points so that you can look at it. But you have someone from a nursing rehabilitation standpoint. So I'm going to use Christine Ayers right now. And I don't know if she's the best example, but she's the example I'm going to use. She's currently being carried under Medicare Part A. She's considered a skilled resident. She's a handful that I do see, and therapy is no longer working with her. But the goal is to get her home, or back to the assisted living, I'm sorry, not to get home. So from a nursing perspective, you guys should be able to know, what is she expected to do when she gets back there? Is she expected to give herself her own insulin? Is she expected to do her own dressing changes? What is she expected to do? I'm using her as the example. She's probably not the best. But one of the things, if you have someone who's discharging home and there's not a lot going on, then what are you going to teach them? What do you want them to know? Do you want them to know what their medications are and what the reason they're taking that medication is? Do you want them to know how to change the dressing on their heel? If they're a diabetic, do you want them to know how to check for heel ulcers with a mirror? That's our responsibility, you guys. That's what a nurse does. So we've got to identify, why are they here? Well, when they're going home, what do they need to do? And that's why having that collaborative communication with that interdisciplinary team is just going to be key. And having a way to trigger your condition changes and your charting. And that's why I think it's just a really big deal that you guys figure out, or whatever your system is, to have that system in place to say, how are we going to know what's changed? What I didn't cover, and I should have covered, and I apologize for that, and I think I have two documents and I didn't show the right document, but that's okay, it's the same information, is that someone has a condition change. So anybody who has a condition change, so someone has a fall, no injury, but they had a fall. That's a change in condition. They had a fall. There was a reason they had a fall. It might have been because of toileting, it might have been because they were reaching for something, but something happened. If someone has a new red area on their buttocks, if someone has a temp, any type of condition change for that resident warrants an automatic 72-hour follow-up. So for the next 72 hours, Q shift, there should be something documented about what's happening until you feel like you can resolve it, but for at a minimum of 72 hours. So if someone falls, you should be following that fall for 72 hours. If someone has a temp and a change in vital signs, you need to follow that for 72 hours. We just had a resident not too long ago that was being investigated because we had a blood pressure and it was abnormal in the morning on Saturday. The nurse did a great job of documenting it. No one after her followed up until 24 hours later, and she ended up in the hospital. No one after that followed up. So what is your system? And I'm asking you not to, you don't necessarily have to ask, but and Cynthia's here too, but what is your system for letting the next shift on know that there's a condition change? Do you have a document that you use? Do you just pass it on and report? What is the system for knowing who you have to follow up on? And that might just be you guys thinking about that a little and then talking to Cynthia and saying we don't have a good system for that, or we do have a system but we're not using it. So you need to identify that. So this lady who had a hypotensive episode and subsequently ended at the hospital, and I think she died, I'm not, maybe someone knows what I'm talking about. No one followed up on her after that initial. The nurse called the doctor, the nurse did all the right things, but prudently, even that nurse should have taken the blood pressure again. The next shift should have monitored the blood pressure again, right? We need to follow up on that. Patrick, I just heard someone say, I have an unstageable ulcer on someone's hip. That is unacceptable. That is unacceptable. Why does someone have an unstageable, meaning an eschar covered, a black scabbed area on their hip? It's because we didn't do a follow-up. Someone saw it, or CNA saw it, or something happened, but it didn't get carried through. So again, that might be just an opportunity for you as a team, the next time Cynthia does a nurses meeting, is to say as a team, how can we do this better? What kind of system can we put in place? So what I want to do today is make sure you understood what the charting expectations are. We are going to give you handouts for that. Cynthia will get you all that. My printer, I can't print when I'm at Ingleside for some reason, but we will get you that. And that you know that I do have to chart more frequently than we're doing right now. And we have to identify why that person is there. And Cynthia, do you guys use a SBA? We are by law required to chart on that pressure injury with measurements and updates at least every 7 days. So there are lots of, again, just so you know, there are lots of expectations out there, and we wanted to start with the basics. So if someone comes in new, if you have a new admission today, you're going to chart on them Q shift, right, for the first 72 hours. After that 72 hours, you're going to chart on it as often as they need, but at least once per day, and you want that RN to at least weigh in there at least once in there, whether it's, recognize that the LPN collected all this data or did the assessment themselves, right? If someone has a condition change, we're going to chart on that person every shift following that condition change until it resolves or until the end of the 72 hours. Anytime you feel that niggle, I call it the niggle, like you feel that little tickle on the back of your neck that says, I wonder if I should call the doctor, what are you going to do? Call him. Just call him. You will never go wrong calling the doctor. If you have to ask yourself, I wonder if I should call the doctor, call the doctor. Give the responsibility to that person. I called the physician. This is what they told me to do. I called the physician. And then prudently, as a nurse, say, what do I need to do to make sure this condition doesn't get any worse? Or how am I going to identify if there's going to be further problems? So if I use the case of the hypertensive lady, I wonder if I should check that blood pressure again in my shift just to see where she's at. She got her medications. Now I should probably see an hour later, where is she at? I'm going to check her right before the end of my shift, and when I pass it off and report, I can do that. Just recognizing what you pass off and report. Do you guys just do a verbal report? Just recognizing what you're passing off and report. Do you have a form that you use for report, or do you do any? That might be something we can consider too.
Yeah.
Is a form. And so again, just trying to get it out there that we're going to be changing our processes, and we're looking at documentation. But your CNAs, they're your eyes and ears on the floor. All of you are working the floor and working very hard at that. But to get your CNAs together at the beginning of your shift, after you've gotten report, to let them know what your expectations are. So if you were my team on South Hall tonight, it was us 5 who were going to run the floor, I'd call you all together and say, hey guys, this is what I need to know. I need to know the next time that Sophie voids, because she didn't void at all. I need to know by 7 o'clock if she's voided or not. So-and-so was at the dentist today, no straws. Please report to me any pain. That not only empowers your CNAs, they love that. They love to give you information, right? But you have to tell them, just like you said, it's nice to have no expectations. What are your expectations of them? And when the floor is feeling a little hairy, what can you do to reconnect the floor together? Hey guys, let's just stop for a minute. What's going on? We got a lot going on. How can we better divvy this up, or whatever the case might be? So that will help you in the long run, especially if you have a heavier load, and you guys do have a heavy load for monitoring people. You've got some sick people here, some people who need some heavy monitoring. And unfortunately, we've missed the boat on that. And I don't think you've missed the boat in monitoring the people. I think we're not taking credit for what we're doing. So if anything, you know, reset yourself to say, how can I take credit for what I'm doing? And then we can work on more efficient ways to do it.